was a key witness in the drama that became known as the Moors murders. He was Myra Hindley's brother-in-law, and apart from her and Brady, the only other person who actually saw one of the murders taking place. He became a central figure in the most infamous criminal case in 20th century British history. He has spoken only rarely about what he saw, but in this program he will tell us the full story of what happened back then in the 1960s.
Brady, if you say he was 100% evil, he was every name you can put on him. He was them and more. But in all honesty, Brady slept with the devil, and that was her.
David Smith, Myra Hindley's brother-in-law, grew up in the same 1960s Manchester streets as Myra and her family.
The streets were innocent. What I mean by that is kids could come home from school. If mum and dad were out at work, it didn't matter. Neighbours were there. They could have a jam sandwich and disappear for a couple of hours. That wouldn't raise concern. That would not be a problem. This was just the way of the streets. They were safe. A nice place to come from and a nice place to be.
In the early 1960s, when he was 15, David Smith began going out with Myra Hindley's sister, Maureen.
Maureen was living with a mother and a father at 20 Eaton Street. Across the way, 2 minutes' walk would have been the grandmother's house. Myra was being looked after at the grandmother's house. At this stage now, I'm getting very close to Maureen, and I made her pregnant, and we married when I was 16. Up to me marrying Maureen, I had no social connection with Brady or Hindley, other than a nodding acquaintance.
But now the couples began making occasional trips together in Myra Hindley's car. On one early outing, Brady showed a hint of violence.
We was on a motorway and a car had cut us up. The occupants were lads or what have you, and they were having a laugh. Brady took this totally wrong and just ordered Myra to overtake them, burn them off. So at high speed she did, and he did no more. A few empty wine bottles. He positioned himself at the back of our vehicle and just threw them at the car, aiming for the windscreen. This is the first time he shows any being irrational.
David and Maureen suffered a tragedy when their 6-month-old baby died. Myra Hindley's behaviour was further evidence of Brady's influence over her.
We showed her into the parlour, and it was an open coffin, and I think that she wasn't prepared for that. So, just for a few seconds, tears appeared in her eyes. That's all. I'm not over-elaborating this. It was seconds. And it had smudged the makeup under her eyes. She wore very dusty Springfield-type makeup under the eyes. Very heavy black mascara-type eye makeup. And the watering of her eyes had made the makeup run. She quickly got a grip of herself. And then she was more concerned about if she went outside and Ian would notice that she'd showed emotion. And I've got to emphasise, it's only a few seconds of emotion. But she had to dry her eyes and clean her eyes before she returned back to the car.
This is Hattersley, a Manchester housing estate. In 1965, David Smith and Maureen moved here. Myra Hindley, her grandmother and Ian Brady had already moved to this row of houses in Wardlebrook Avenue. It was here Brady revealed more of his violent nature.
We started talking of petty crime. A situation of a robbery. could we do this? Could we do that? And again, it's in a cloud of drink. I'm not excusing it. I'm not excusing anything. But it was all said through a cloud of drink. It's two blokes, very drunk, talking bravado and just waffling. This then changes into a more serious matter, and he produces guns. Now this, to me, at my stage of life now, I can look back and say, that impressed me. That impressed me. The simple fact that these were metal things. I'd never seen a gun before in my life. And all of a sudden there's a 45, there's a 38. These are big guns. And he's producing them and showing them to me.
Myra Hindley showed little interest in their talk of crime.
Occasionally she'd take part, but not comment very much as regards robberies. More, she would be talking to Maureen about girly talk. The girls would get bored and literally go to bed, go for a lie down, and leave us drinking, listening to big band music, Hitler tapes. A pretty bad atmosphere altogether, to be honest.
Matters came to an unexpected head here in Wardlebrook Avenue, one night in October 1965. Myra asked Dave, still only 17, to walk her home to collect some wine.
I go in the house. She takes me into the kitchen. To the right is the living room. Straight ahead is the kitchen. It's a very small house. To the left is a set of stairs. That is the entrance hall. Into the kitchen, she opens a drawer and she takes out, I don't know, 5, 6 miniature wine bottles, puts them on the top of the cabinet. Excuse me. Wait here a minute. There's the wine. Then she goes into the living room. A minute passes, maybe 2 minutes, I don't know, a minute or so, very short time. All of a sudden, there's screaming, there's swearing, there's banging around. She screams, "Dave, Dave, help him." I go running into the living room, and Brady's got this lad whacking him and whacking him and hitting him with an axe. It's very violent. Very, very violent. The lad is on the floor. Brady's still hitting him. I think at the trial he'd received 14 blows. It was very bad. He then strangles him. He's swearing at him. He's calling him. He's cursing him. He's calling him filthy names. And then it's over. It stops. I'm there. Hindley's there. And Brady's there. And everything has to be normal. I emphasise this. It has to be normal, or else I don't walk out of that house. Now, what steps are taken after that is purely leading up to me going out of that house. I don't care as long as I get out of that house. We wrapped the body up. We carried the body upstairs. We come downstairs, and the three of us, mostly myself and Hindley, but Brady was part of it as well, cleaned up. He passes me the axe. Feel the weight of that. How did he take that? Feel the weight of that. Hindley sits down. There's a chair next to the fireplace. She says, I saw the blow register in his eyes. He never saw anything. He never knew anything. I saw the blow register in his eyes. It's a normal conversation. I know it sounds unbelievable. It's a normal conversation. If they'd have walked in with chocolate biscuits and tea, I would have stayed and drank tea and ate chocolate biscuits. I would have done anything just to get out of that house.
Myra Hindley appeared calm throughout.
She would pick bone and hair up off the floor and not have a problem with it. Just drop it in the bag. There was no, oh, would one of you pick that up? I don't want to. No, just straightforward. Just straightforward.
After the living room had been cleaned and tidied, Dave was finally able to go home in the small hours of the morning.
I was covered in blood. I went in. Maureen was in bed. I got her out of bed. I went to the bathroom and I absolutely vomited. To the point where I was retching and I was in a bad state, physically in a bad state. I then had to tell her what had happened. I've just seen somebody killed. Doesn't go into any great detail. Don't be looking for detail. There isn't. You just... How do you mean? So I'm showing her my clothes. Look at me. We've got to do something. We decide we're going to the police.